when we thought things couldn't get any more bizarre, Kirk Frost dropped the bombshell that has everyone talking. He is flatly refusing to accept Rasheeda's baby, which is right. Kirk is refusing to accept the child as his own. The drama is playing out in the most shocking way possible after the rumors of Rasheeda's alleged involvement with another man went wild, but no one expected Kirk to take things this far. He's not just questioning things privately. With accusations flying, heated arguments breaking out, and shocking revelations coming to light, this situation is rapidly getting out of control. Stay tuned because the details we're about to uncover will leave you speechless. Kirk's actions of making bold statements, distancing himself from Rasheeda, and sending a clear message that the baby is not mine are causing a huge stir and dividing their family and their fan base like never before. Is Kirk merely looking for a way out of this relationship? Kirk Frost, sitting on the edge of the couch with his arms crossed tightly over his chest and his jaw clenched, looked at Rasheeda with a look of complete disbelief. The air between them was full of unspoken accusations, and despite Rasheeda's repeated attempts to calm him down, Kirk wasn't having any of it. "I don't understand why you keep looking at me like that, Kirk." Rasheeda snapped, her voice trembling with frustration. She was trying to maintain her composure, but the stress was getting to her. "You're acting like I did something wrong when I..." Kirk's dry, humorous laugh made Rasheeda's stomach turn. This wasn't the man she fell in love with. Rather, it was someone colder, harder, and more distant than before from family. "You want to talk about family now, but Rasheeda, are you serious?" His eyes darkened with anger, a rage that had been simmering beneath the surface for a while. "You've been walking around here with a secret, and now you want me to just act like everything is fine." "No, I can't do his time." When rumors of her alleged affair began to circulate, she tried to contain the damage, but the whispers kept getting louder. The more she tried to reassure Kirk, the more distant he became. But the truth was that Kirk had already made up his mind, and nothing she could say seemed to change it. He continued to speak in a low, sharp voice, his eyes never leaving hers. "But that baby is..." Those words hit Rasheeda like a slap across the face, causing her breath to catch in her throat and momentarily preventing her from finding the words to respond, the weight of his accusation pressing down on her chest, making it impossible for her to breathe. Did he really think that after everything they had been through, including years of working on their marriage, the ups and downs, and the cheating scandals that Kirk himself had caused, he was now turning this around on her? "How dare you say that?" She finally choked out, her voice shaking with disbelief and anger. "And how dare you not back down?" "Oh, I dare, because I'm sick of being the idiot. Rasheeda, I know what's been going on. I see how you've been acting sly, taking those calls when you..." Rasheeda's eyes narrowed as he went on. "You expect me to believe that's my child when deep down I know something isn't right." The irony of it all was enough to make her sick. "You think you know?" spat at, her voice rising with each word. "What the hell do you know, Kirk?" What proof do you have?" You just assumed things because this was her husband, the man who had betrayed her more than once, the man she had forgiven for his infidelity, the man she had stood by when the world turned against him, and now he was accusing her of being unfaithful. Kirk exhaled sharply, rubbing his hand over his face as if trying to keep himself from completely losing it. He was exhausted from the constant arguments, the sleepless nights, and the doubts that gnawed at him every time he looked at Rasheeda. "You think I don't feel it, but a man knows when something doesn't add up, and this doesn't add up." Tears burned at the back of Rasheeda's eyes, but she refused to let them fall because she wasn't feeling anything. Before she broke, not in front of him or anyone else, she had always been the one who kept everything together, even when it seemed like her world was falling apart. "I can't believe you," she whispered, shaking her head. "After everything we've been through, after all the times you've messed up, and I still stood by you. This is how you do me," she said. "You just throw me out like trash, call me a liar, and call me unfaithful." Kirk remained silent for a while, simply sitting there staring at her, his face unreadable. But just when Rasheeda thought he might so frequently, He struck her with the most agonizing words yet. I ain't. He said, never questioned your kids before, in a tone devoid of emotion, but this one isn't mine. That was the tipping point, and before Rasheeda could stop herself, she grabbed the closest throw pillow and threw it at him with all her strength. You don't deserve me. You don't deserve the family, she screamed. Kirk avoided the pillow with ease, his expression unchanging. Maybe I don't. He muttered to himself, maybe I never did. A tense silence fell, and they both stood on the edge of something, breathing heavily. Rasheeda was about to storm out of the room when KP dropped another B-show. I want a paternity test, he said in a firm and steady voice, and until I get those results, I'm not claiming anything. Rasheeda's breath hitched at a paternity test. Was he serious? Did he really think she had been unfaithful after all the years of loyalty and the time she had forgiven him for his mistakes? This is where they ended up. Kirk, you can't be serious, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She had always worried that Kirk's uncertainties and fears would eventually drive them to this point, but she never really thought it would happen. Now that they were together, however, the expression in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. Oh, he was serious, and their marriage would never be the same again. Rasheeda turned to face him, her body shaking under the weight of everything, feeling his gaze burning into her. But she was unable to face him any longer. Everything they had created was collapsing, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She turned back to face Kirk, feeling a mixture of pain and rage. You really want to go there, Kirk, she said, exhaling sharply and rubbing his hands over his face in frustration. After all the dirt you've done, after all the times you stepped out on me, you have the nerve to question me, she said, her heart hammering against her ribs because she couldn't believe she had just heard a paternity test after all these years and everything they had gone through as a couple. Kirk was actually questioning the legitimacy of the child. This isn't about the past, it's about the present, and I have serious doubts right now. Her hands are clenched into fists at her sides. You know what? I had doubts too when you had a whole damn baby behind my back. But did I leave or did I accuse someone? No. I stayed and worked through it because I believed in us and in you. And this is what I got in return. Kirk sighed and shook his head. Rasheeda, don't act like I didn't pay for my mistakes. You reminded me of that every single day. And yes, you stay, but you never let me forget it. Other foot, and you can't handle it. Tears filled Rasheeda's eyes, but she wouldn't let them fall. No, Kirk, this isn't about me not being able to handle it. It's about you not believing me. You still see me as the same girl from back in the day, but I grew up, Kirk, and I think the biggest mistake I made was assuming you did too. Kirk scoffed, rubbing his beard. Perhaps my biggest mistake was assuming you would always be honest with me. Away, you've been waiting for something like this so you can check out of this marriage without looking like the bad guy. Kirk's jaw tightened, and for a moment he didn't say anything because, deep down, he might have been looking for an escape because their marriage had been rocky for a while, and this situation just put everything under a microscope. But he couldn't back down now, not when his gut was telling him that something wasn't right. I'm not trying to push you away. Rasheeda. He finally said, his voice quieter now, but I'm not going to be played either. I think I need answers, and until I get them, I can't be 100% with you anymore. That's what you think. Kirk held her gaze. Rasheeda felt tense all over. She knew Kirk could be stubborn, but this was a new level of cold, and it hurt more than she was willing to admit. So what now, Kirk? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You want to pack your bags? You want to leave? Because if you really believe this baby isn't yours, then what are we even doing here? Kirk sighed, looking away for a moment before looking back at her. I'm staying, he said firmly, but I won't be playing daddy until I know for sure. A new wave of rage swept through Rasheeda. You're staying, Kirk, he said, because this isn't some damn hotel where you can check in and out whenever it suits you. This is our home, and that baby isn't just some question mark you get to ignore until it fits your damn narrative. Then profit. Kirk shot back. If you're sure, then take the damn test. Rasheeda's lips parted, and she let out a sharp breath as she stared at him in disbelief. Fine, fine, you want a test, you got it, Kirk said. The house was a war zone, and they hardly spoke or even looked at each other. The tension was so high that even their friends noticed something was wrong. Carly Red was the first to call Rasheeda a girl. Bro, what the hell is going on? I heard Kirk telling Reckless at the studio that he didn't think the baby was his. Tell me that's not true. Rasheeda released a sharp breath and gripped the phone tightly. Yes, it's true that this man had the audacity to question me, Carly, after all the years of his. Was silent for a moment before she let out a loud, exaggerated gasp. Oh, hell no, you need to chim. Him. Rasheeda, you are the damn side chick. You're with his wife. He better put some respect on your name. I already told him, she said, pacing the living room. I agreed to put on the put-ons on Carly, but it's not even about that anymore. It's about the principal, who doesn't trust me, and I'm not sure if I can forgive that. Meanwhile, Kirk was talking to Scrappy. I'm not trying to be that dude, Scrappy said, shaking his head. But are you sure this is? Doubt this? Do you really think that Kirk would do you that? That? Kirk exhaled, rubbing the. He didn't respond because he knew deep down that if he was mistaken about this, he might lose Rasheeda forever. The day of the test arrived sooner than either of them had anticipated, and they hardly spoke on the way to the clinic. I want to believe her, Scrap, but something isn't sitting right, and I'm not about to be out here raising another man's child like a damn fool. Scrappy leaned back, arms crossed, man. As they pulled into the parking lot, Rasheeda said, your voice was calm, but your eyes burned with an unspoken challenge. Kirk shook his head. No, we're doing this. They walked inside, the silence between them growing deeper. Neither of them knew what the results would bring, but the clinic smelled like antiseptic and cold air, an uncomfortable combination that only made their tension worse. Rasheeda sat stiffly in the waiting area, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her nails digging. The nurse led them into a private room where an older man was already waiting. His face was kind but professional, and his eyes flicked between the two of them as if he could sense the war brewing beneath their skin. Kirk sat next to her, his leg bouncing anxiously, his face set in stone. When the nurse finally called their names, Rasheeda stood up first, her movements controlled and sharp. Kirk followed, keeping a small distance between them as if afraid that even the air between them would explode. We're here for a paternity test, so the doctor said in a neutral tone. Yeah, Kirk said, his voice was gruff. We need answers. Rasheeda let out a sharp breath through her nose, but she didn't say anything. The doctor nodded and put on gloves. Okay. The process is simple. We'll take a cheek swab from both of you as well as a sample from the baby, and the results should be ready in a few days. Rasheeda's jaw tightened for a few more nights of this terrible experience of sleeping next to a man who believed she was lying when, in fact, their marriage was in shambles. The doctor took the swabs, labeled them, and told them that the results would be expedited. The ride home was as silent as the one there, and Rasheeda stared out the window, looking as exhausted as she felt. Kirk gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. When they finally pulled into the driveway, Rasheeda couldn't hold it in any longer. You better hope you're right, she said quietly, her voice laced with anger so deep it felt like a knife. Kirk sighed, rubbing his temple. Rasheeda, no, she yelled, turning to face him. You made your decision to doubt me, so now you better hope he wasn't wrong, because if he was. She shook her head and laughed bitterly. Kirk flinched as the weight of her words hit him hard. Rasheeda, don't do that, she scoffed, throwing the car door open. I'm not doing anything, Kirk. You did this. With that, she stormed inside, slamming the door behind her. For the next few days, the tension in the house only increased, and Rasheeda hardly spoke to Kirk, only interacting when she was not in there. She was in the baby's room rocking the baby to sleep while whispering gentle assurances that everything would be all right. Kirk, on the other hand, felt like a prisoner in his own house, and while the guilt was eating away at him, he tried to divert his attention by going to the studio. But even there, He was unable to get away because the worm had spread. "What the hell are you doing?" Stevie asked, shaking his head as he leaned against the mixing board. "For a paternity test for your wife." Kirk let out a deep breath and rubbed his face, but he got it. "You're out here acting like you don't know the woman you married. Rasheeda isn't some groupie, and now he's treating her like some random girl off the street." Kirk clenched his jaw, saying, "I just needed to be certain, yeah. And what happens when the results come back and prove you wrong?" Stevie asked, raising an eyebrow. "Are you ready to deal with that foul all out?" Kirk didn't respond because he wasn't sure he was. Meanwhile, Rasheeda was dealing with her own storm. She had kept quiet about it in an attempt to manage it privately. But Carly had a big mouth, and within days, social media was ablaze with Kirk's questions about Rasheeda's child. After all he did, Rashid even needs to leave his ass. The disrespect is that Kiss Kirk Frost is trending, and not in a good way. The people who had previously defended Kirk were now driving him mercilessly, and Swift and the ruthless fans were furious. Rasheeda watched the chaos unfold from her phone, her stomach turning. She hated that Kirk had put them in this situation in the first place, that their business was out there for the world to judge, and most of all, she hated that Kirk had put them in this situation in first place. Call Rasheeda finally cracked. "You ruined us," she whispered as he stood in the doorway of their bedroom. Kirk sat on the edge of the bed and looked up at her, his expression unreadable. She repeated, shuddering, "I don't even know if I can ever look at you the same way again." Kirk swallowed hard. "Listen," she said, wiping away a tear. "Oh, now I'm a baby. Presently you want to play the love husband." And Kirk stood up, stepping toward her, but she backed away. "Hey, don't you dare act as if you care now. You have to live with it, Kirk." The following morning, the phone was placed between Kirk and Rasheeda at the kitchen table like a ticking time bomb. Kirk hesitated before answering, "Yes," and the voice on the other end was calm and professional. "We have your results." The room seemed to shrink around them as Kirk asked, "Your throat is dry." There was a pause, and then the test confirmed that you are indeed the biological father. Kirk felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. Rasheeda just stared at him without showing any emotion. The call ended for a moment. Neither of them spoke. "Ben, are you happy now?" Rasheeda whispered to Kirk. "K." Opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He was mistaken. He had doubted his wife and his family. "For what Rasheeda I know," she cut him off standing up, and now she shook her head, her voice full of emotion. Kirk felt his heart sink because for the first time in his life, he realized that he might have just lost the best thing that had ever happened to him. Kirk sat frozen, his heart hammering in his chest, the truth out. Rasheeda hadn't lied, she hadn't betrayed him, and she was certain as hell hadn't done anything to deserve the humiliation he had caused her, and now she. He opened his mouth to say something, but Rasheeda had already turned away and wasn't giving him a chance to make things right. Not now, maybe not ever. She walked upstairs with slow, heavy footsteps, and Kirk wanted to follow her, to pull her into his arms, but something inside him told him that it wasn't his place anymore, that he had made this mess, and that he had to live with it. The next few days were unbearable, and when she did speak to him, it was clipped and emotionless, as if she were speaking to a business partner rather than her husband. Kirk was drowning in guilt every time he looked at her, seeing the hurt in her eyes every time she walked past him. It was like a diver straight to his chest. He had been a fool, a damn fool, and the worst part was that he didn't know if he'd ever be able to fix this. The world outside their home wasn't any kinder the moment Kirk's doubts hit the internet. Social media had exploded, and Kirk Frost just proved he isn't worth a damn. She moved around the house in silence, taking care of the baby, answering calls, and keeping herself busy. It's crazy that a married man would accuse his wife of having a child with someone else. Rasheeda is stronger than me because I would have had that divorce lawyer on speed dial. Not only were the fans angry, but even their closest friends expressed their displeasure, saying, "Bam be getting hold back." Rasheeda said bluntly over FaceTime, "This isn't love, this is disrespect." Carrie Red, who typically enjoys causing drama, had surprisingly taken Rasheeda as a side too, really embarrassing you. Once more, girl, I believe that we had grown from this. Even Scrappy Kirk's own friend had called him out, and he shook his head over the phone, saying, "This is the mother of your kids. You really let the world think she stepped out on you. That's foul." Kirk had no defense because, in reality, everything was fine. One night, Kirk discovered Rasheeda sitting in the nursery rocking the baby in her arms. The soft glow of the nightlight cast shadows across her face, making her appear even more worn out than she already was. He hesitated, and when he asked, "May I come in?" she didn't respond, but she didn't tell him to leave. That was sufficient. He entered the room slowly and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. Neither of them said anything. The only sound was the soft rocking chair creak and the baby's soft breathing. At last he said, "I don't even know where to start." Rasheeda continued to stare at the baby, and then he swallowed hard. "I need you to know how sorry I am," she said with a bitter laugh. "I need you to know how sorry I am." Her voice was quiet, but it was profound. "Kirk, do you even realize what you did? You didn't just hurt me, you humiliated me. You let the world believe that I was out here cheating on you. It made me cry every night. I messed up bad, Rasheeda. Instead of talking to you, I let my insecurities get the better of me." And instead of speaking, he exhaled sharply. She shook her head and tightened her grip around the baby. "I'm not just worried about you messing up, Kirk. I'm worried about the fact that I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." Rasheeda's heart clenched, so she got up and carefully placed the baby in the crib. When she turned back to him, her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. "I love you, Kirk," she said softly but lovingly. Kirk felt as though the floor had been torn out from under him once more. "Rasheeda, don't say that I need space." She wiped her face and took a deep breath. "I'm taking the baby to my mom's for a few days." Kirk's stomach dropped, but wait, what? She grabbed the diaper bag from the room's corner and slung it over her shoulder. "I just need time to think, Rasheeda." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Don't leave like this, Kirk." She walked past him out of the nursery down the stairs. Kirk followed in desperation, clawing at his throat at the door. Kirk and Rasheeda have been through it all, but this might be the tipping point. After all, can their marriage even withstand this level of betrayal? Will Rasheeda ever forgive Kirk, or is this the final straw? Kirk stood there staring at the closed door, his chest tightening with every second that went by. He had spent years fighting to keep this marriage together, but now he wasn't sure if he had finally lost Rasheeda for good. This story is far from over, and you already know that the public will have a lot to say about it. Therefore, we want to hear from you. Do you think Kirk deserves another chance? Should Rasheeda forgive him, or is it time for her to move on? Please let us know in the comments if you want to stay up to date on every update on this crazy situation. In the midst of all of this, will Kirk step up and make things right? And let's not forget the baby. Meanwhile, be sure to click the subscribe button and enable all notifications because, believe me, you won't want to miss what comes next. If you're as startled as we are by this, don't forget to like this video. Keep an eye out for all of this turmoil because the story has only just begun.